My name is Kara L. Mercer. I am 23 years old, and the last time my family saw me, I was a scared 15-year-old girl walking out of that house before sunrise with 2 duffel bags and no one to wave goodbye. Now I roll into the same cracked driveway in a car that costs more than their entire house. The engine hums down to a soft silence when I press the button. The display fades. All that's left is my reflection in the glossy black screen and the faded blue siding of the home I grew up in. Same patchy grass. Same plastic flamingos stuck in the dirt from some holiday no one remembers. Same hairline crack in the front step I used to trip over as a kid. No one is waiting at the door. I check the time. 2:03 p.m., exactly when my mother said to come. Around 2, she'd written, cheerful and casual, like we were talking about meeting for coffee in the city instead of a reunion 8 years in the making. The curtains are drawn. The house looks small now, like someone washed it on hot and shrank it. I don't get out. I sit there with my hands on the wheel, my heart annoyingly steady. I thought I'd be shaking. I thought I'd feel something bigger. Rage, maybe. Or the kind of grief that claws its way up your throat and makes you wish you'd never answered that message. Instead, all I feel is distance. 10 minutes pass. Then 15. The sun moves just enough to throw a harsh glare across the windshield. I'm about to call, not because I'm worried, but because I'm irritated when I see them. 3 figures walking slowly up the street from the direction of the main road. My father is carrying a small red gas can. My mother is waving before she's even close enough for me to see her face clearly. My older sister is in the middle, one hand gripping the gas can, the other wrapped around the wrist of a little boy clinging to her leg. Of course, the car. They get close enough for me to see the sweat darkening my father's shirt, the way my mother's smile strains at the edges, how my sister's eyes keep flicking from my car to my face and back again, like she's trying to convince herself both are real. The little boy looks about 4 or 5, big eyes, blank expression, the kind kids get when they've already learned how to tune out adult chaos. My mother tries to laugh. The sedan overheated, she says, like we're picking up an old conversation instead of standing in the middle of a street that suddenly feels too public. Just 3 blocks down. We tried to push it, but, well, she pats her chest and laughs again. We're not as young as we used to be. My father doesn't say a word. His gaze is glued to the car I just stepped out of, taking in the smooth lines, the logo on the front, the crest of the dashboard visible through the glass. It's my sister who speaks first. Please forgive us for everything. Her voice cracks on the last word. She doesn't sound like the girl who used to throw her head back and laugh when she called me names. She sounds tired. Not just hot and out of breath, tired in her bones. I don't answer. I just nod once, sharp and small, and walk toward the house. I hear them fall in behind me, footsteps on concrete, the faint slosh of gasoline in the can, the boy's sneakers scraping against the path. The front door sticks like it always did. My mother has to shove her shoulder against it twice before it gives. The smell hits me first. Not bad. Just old. Dust, stale cooking oil, a hint of something floral from a plug-in air freshener, trying its best. Inside, nothing has changed. The same peeling wallpaper in the hallway curling at the corners near the baseboard. The same off-balance ceiling fan ticking softly above the living room, one blade perpetually lower than the others. The same crooked family photo hanging by the doorway, taken a decade ago in a department store studio. I'm in it. Teenage me, shoulders hunched, standing 2 feet away from my sister like we were allergic to touching. She's smiling wide, arms slung around my mother's waist. My father's hand rests on her shoulder. No one is touching me. The frame's corner is completely bent now. No one has bothered to straighten it. We got burgers, my mother chirps from behind me, already moving toward the kitchen, like if she keeps talking fast enough, the air won't have time to thicken. Your father's going to fire up the grill. It'll be nice. Just us catching up. I sit at the kitchen table because I don't know where else to go. The chair legs wobble on the uneven linoleum. The table is the same scratched faux wood rectangle where everything started. I was 15 the first time my sister called me the mistake child. Out loud. It was a night a lot like this. Humid. The kind of heat that makes the air feel heavy. We were having spaghetti with canned sauce because that was what we always had when payday was still 3 days away. The TV was off, which meant my parents were tired enough to pretend they wanted conversation. My sister twirled noodles around her fork, chewed loudly, and said it like she was commenting on the weather. Well, Kara's the mistake child. Just like that. like it was a nickname, like everyone at the table already knew what she meant. My mother snorted. My father burst out laughing. They looked at each other, shoulders shaking, like she'd just told the joke of the year. I didn't laugh. I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. There had always been hints, little comments when my mother thought I couldn't hear, jokes about surprises and late blessings made to friends in hushed tones that weren't actually that hushed. What hit different that night wasn't the word. It was the way they laughed with her, the way their eyes slid over me like I was a punchline they were finally admitting out loud. After dinner, I took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and walked out onto the porch with my old laptop. The porch boards creaked under my feet. The air was cooler outside. I sat on the top step, balanced the laptop on my knees, and opened the tab I'd kept saved for weeks. A simple to-do list app in JavaScript. It didn't do much. It stored tasks in local storage, let you add and delete items, change the background color when you checked something off. It was messy and inefficient, full of code that would probably make a real developer cringe. But it worked. I remember feeling a quiet kind of pride, not the kind you brag about, the kind you tuck away inside yourself like a small, warm ember. I didn't show anyone. I just kept the tab open so I could look at it again later. My fingers tapped out new ideas on the keys while the voices drifted through the thin walls behind me. My sister's voice, loudest of all. "She'll probably end up living under a bridge with Wi-Fi," she said, laughing. "As long as she has an internet connection, she'll think she's made it." More laughter. My mother, my father, my sister, all blending into one sound that chased me out into the dark. I stayed outside longer than I needed to. Let the bugs find me. Let the laptop screen dim and then brighten when I nudged the touchpad. I pretended I couldn't hear them. My sister was 17 then, working as a cashier at a grocery store 2 miles away. She had just gotten a 25-cent raise and walked around the house like she'd been crowned employee of the decade. Every day she came home with new stories about rude customers and lazy coworkers, about how many hours she'd picked up and how big her next paycheck would be. She loved comparing it to my nothing. I didn't have a paycheck. I was still in school, trying to figure things out, teaching myself to code from YouTube tutorials and forum threads between homework assignments. Maybe if you spent less time on the computer and more time getting a real job, you wouldn't be such a disappointment, she told me once when I refused to wash her dishes. I don't know why that house was always so loud when I needed quiet and so suffocatingly quiet when I needed noise. I didn't have my own room. My sister and I weren't roommates, but we might as well have been enemies sharing a battleground. We had our separate rooms, but the hallway between them was neutral ground we both tried to claim. She played music loud, slammed her door louder, and talked on the phone about me like I couldn't hear. "She's weird," she'd say. "Always on that stupid laptop. I swear, if the power went out, she'd just die." I always heard. My parents weren't monsters. They were just tired. Tired of working long shifts, tired of bills, tired of dreams they'd let go of so long ago they couldn't even remember the details anymore. They wanted me to give up early too, to be realistic before I'd even had a chance to try. "Computer stuff is fine as a hobby," my father said one night, standing behind me while I typed. "But you need something useful. You're not going to build the next big thing from this porch, Kara." My mother chimed in from the kitchen, voice sharp with exhaustion. "You're not going to build anything if you don't start helping around here. We're not feeding you, so you can play pretend all day." It didn't matter that I was building something, that I was learning, that I had a plan, even if it was small and shaky. To them, I was just a drain. A mistake that came with a mouth to feed and no guarantee of return. The night everything cracked open wasn't dramatic. No slammed plates, no screaming fight. My sister came home late from her shift, smelling like fryer oil and cheap perfume. She launched into another story about a rude customer, how no one appreciated hard work anymore, how she was the only one who cared. I was sitting at the table with my laptop. She pointed her fork at me like it was a weapon. "She wouldn't know anything about that," she said. "She's too busy playing pretend. She's still the mistake child." She looked at my parents when she said it, a little smile curling at the edges of her mouth, waiting for the punchline to land. They laughed. Both of them. That laugh did more damage than any insult. It was the certainty in it, the ease, like they'd all decided together that I didn't belong and were just now letting me in on the joke. I closed the laptop quietly. I stood up. I didn't say a word. In my room, I pulled 2 duffel bags from under the bed, one for clothes, one for my laptop and charger and the thin stack of printouts I'd been keeping hidden, a community college acceptance letter, information about dorms in a neighboring city, bus schedules. I already had a way out. I just hadn't been sure when to take it. Their laughter gave me my answer. I packed in silence. The house buzzed with the TV in the background. A laugh track from some sitcom bled through the thin wall like a mocking echo. Before sunrise, while the sky was still gray and the streetlights were humming, I slipped out the front door with my bags cutting into my shoulders. I didn't tell anyone. I walked to the bus stop with just enough cash in my pocket for fare and a few days of food. I kept my phone off, not because I was brave, but because I knew if it buzzed in my hand, I might cave and go back. They didn't notice I was gone until that evening. I know because they didn't call until after 6 p.m. I didn't pick up. They didn't try again. The dorm wasn't much, but it was mine. A narrow twin bed pushed against the wall, a desk with a carved-in heart from some girl who lived there before me, a closet that smelled like dust and old paint, and a window that overlooked a parking lot full of faded cars and oil stains. No curtains. At night, the security lights outside made everything glow a sickly orange. The first few nights, I slept in a hoodie with the hood pulled over my eyes, one arm draped around my laptop like someone might try to take it while I slept. Nobody did. The loudest sound was the hum of the mini fridge in the shared hallway and somebody's TV down the corridor. It was the quiet that got me. No sister blasting music through thin walls. No door slamming every time someone wanted to make a point. No murmured conversations in the kitchen, where I was always the subject. No one laughing in the next room, while I sat alone pretending not to hear. Just silence. It felt wrong at first, like maybe they'd follow me somehow, show up in the doorway and ask what I thought I was doing. But the days kept passing, and no one did. No calls, no texts, nothing. Classes started 2 days later. Intro to computer science, discrete math, digital logic, the kind of schedule that made most of the other first years groan and swap horror stories about how hard it was going to be. I sat in the back row with a half-dead pen and a notebook I'd bought from the campus store with borrowed money and wrote everything down. Some things I was behind on. My high school hadn't exactly had a robust math program, and there were moments I felt like I was staring at a foreign language scratched across the whiteboard. But when the professor started talking about loops and arrays and basic data structures, something in me clicked. The coding part came easy. In the computer lab, while other students scrolled through social media or watched videos with headphones slipping off their ears, I stayed glued to the screen. Not because I had to, because I didn't want to stop. While people wandered off to the dining hall in clumps, laughing and complaining about workloads, I sank deeper into lines of code until the words on the screen made more sense than anything anyone had ever said to me at that kitchen table back home. At night, in my dorm room, I watched lectures from top universities online like they were my favorite TV shows. I paused, rewound, took notes. I built small, stupid projects. A weather widget that barely worked. A calculator with an ugly interface. A clunky notes app that froze if you looked at it wrong. They were mine. No one here knew I was the mistake child. No one cared why I'd left home before I could legally drive. No one rolled their eyes when I talked about building something bigger than a grocery store paycheck. To most people on campus, I was just another girl hunched over her laptop, surviving on caffeine and vending machine snacks. I liked it that way. 3 months in, I got my first freelance job. A guy from a tech forum posted that he needed help building a custom dashboard for his small business. I spent an hour just hovering over the reply button, heart hammering, convincing myself I was good enough to even offer. I undercharged, way undercharged. I over-delivered. I worked until my eyes burned, fixing bugs he hadn't even noticed yet, adding small touches he hadn't asked for, documenting everything so clearly he could have handed it to someone else and they'd know exactly what I'd done. He recommended me to 3 other people. By spring, I was making enough money to stop eating gray cafeteria meatloaf 3 times a week. I walked to a discount store off campus, bought a small white mini fridge, hauled it up 3 flights of stairs by myself, and stocked it with energy drinks, leftovers, and cheap yogurt. It was such a stupid little moment, but when I opened that door and saw shelves full of food I had paid for with code I smiled. Nobody laughed. I didn't reach out to my family, not once. My phone stayed mostly quiet, buzzing only with campus notifications and the occasional spam call. Every time I thought about texting my mother, some phantom echo of my sister's voice saying, "Mistake child," would rise up and push my hand away. Once, my sister messaged me on social media. "Still playing hacker?" she wrote, followed by a laughing emoji. I watched the message sit there in the chat window for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I closed the app and left it on red. A week later, her name disappeared from my friends list. She'd unfriended me. Summer came. Most of the students packed up and went home to laundry piles and home-cooked meals and parents waiting with open arms and questions about classes. I didn't have a home to go back to. I stayed in the city, picked up more freelance work, and enrolled in extra summer classes. I moved out of the dorm into a tiny studio apartment off campus that had a door I could lock and no one's name but mine on the lease. I didn't decorate. There was a mattress on the floor, a cheap desk, a folding chair, and my laptop. That was it. The walls were bare. The carpet was a dull brown that never quite looked clean no matter how many times I vacuumed. The Wi-Fi was decent. I taught myself back-end frameworks, built more complex projects, learned how to talk to databases and manage servers. I sent updates to clients at 3 in the morning and woke up to messages asking if I ever slept. I did, just not much. Every once in a while, I'd see my sister's posts float across my feed through mutual friends. Pictures of her in the break room at the store, leaning against a metal table with a paper cup of coffee, captioned like she was working for a space agency instead of scanning groceries. One photo showed a crumpled paycheck she'd flattened out on the table, her biggest yet. It was less than what I made that week from a single client. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I didn't send it to anyone with a smug caption. I just kept scrolling. Silence was easier, cleaner. 2 years slipped by that way. I transferred to a university with a stronger computer science program in a different part of the state. The city was bigger. The buildings were taller. The feeling of possibility pressed in from every direction. By then, I had a steady stream of clients, some long-term, some one-off projects. I started making more than most of my instructors, though I still showed up to their classes, took notes, and nodded in all the right places. I drove an old, beat-up Civic that squealed in reverse and had a check engine light that stayed on like a warning I chose to ignore. I still wore the same faded hoodie from high school, sleeves fraying at the cuffs, strings uneven. On the outside, I looked like any other overworked student. On the inside, things were changing, quietly. I graduated early. There was no big moment, no cap and gown, no proud parents in folding chairs craning their necks to see me cross a stage. I hadn't even ordered the robe. I woke up one morning, checked my email, and saw a notification. My degree requirements were complete. Attached was a PDF of my diploma. I stared at it for a long time. My name, my major. Confirmation that I hadn't been playing pretend. I sent the file to no one. Then the job offers came. Recruiters who'd seen my portfolio online. Startups looking for developers who could ship quickly. Companies that cared less about my GPA and more about the projects I'd built at 2 in the morning when nobody believed in me. I chose a startup in the next state over. They didn't ask many questions about my background. They cared about the code I could write and the problems I could solve. That was it. I moved again into a bigger apartment with an actual bedroom door and windows that looked over a river instead of a parking lot. I bought real furniture for the first time in my life. A couch that didn't sink in the middle. A bed frame, plates that matched. At work, I got a raise 3 months in, then another. I stayed late because I liked the way the office felt when it was half empty. The hum of servers and the glow of monitors keeping me company. One night, a few hours after everyone else had left, my phone buzzed on the desk beside my keyboard. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't think about it again until I was back at my apartment, shoes off, sitting on the couch with leftover takeout boxes spread across the coffee table. Out of habit, more than curiosity, I opened the voicemail app and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. "Hey, Kara, it's Dad." He sounded calm. Too calm. Like he was choosing each word from a list and lining them up carefully. "We heard from someone in town that you're doing well," he said. "That you've got a big tech job now, a place of your own." He paused, like waiting for me to confirm, even though this was just a recording. "The family misses you." The family. Not we, not I. The family. The same unit I'd been pushed out of years ago now suddenly claiming me with a single phrase. "We were thinking maybe you could come visit, just for a weekend." Another pause, a soft exhale. "Anyway, call us back when you get a chance." The message ended. I sat there, phone in my hand, the glow from the TV washing the room in shifting light. I played the voicemail again. Not because I missed him, not because I was moved, because I was trying to hear what he wasn't saying. For years they hadn't called, not when I left, not when I moved, not when I graduated, not when I started working. I could have disappeared completely, and I don't think they would have noticed unless someone mentioned my name at the grocery store. And now, suddenly, they missed me. I didn't call back. Not yet. I let the voicemail sit there for 3 days. A little red notification, dot I refused to clear. I think I wanted to see if they would try again. If this was some once-off attempt or the beginning of something else. They did try again. This time it was my mother. A short, chirpy message on social media, written like we'd just spoken last week. "Hey, honey, we're putting together a little family weekend," she wrote. "Thought maybe you'd want to stop by. It's been a while, just us catching up." Just like that. Like I'd been out of town for a semester instead of gone for years. Like I hadn't left that house because I couldn't stand being the butt of every joke. Like their silence hadn't been its own kind of answer. There was no apology. No, we're sorry. No, we miss you so much. No acknowledgement of anything that had happened. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Irritation warred with a strange, cool curiosity. What did they really want? Before I could overthink it, I typed 2 words. "Sure, I'll come." I didn't tell them what day. I didn't ask for details. I just tossed the answer out like a test and waited to see what they would do with it. My mother replied within minutes. "Saturday afternoon would be perfect," she wrote. "Around 2 p.m. we'll grill burgers, maybe some corn on the cob. Your sister will be here too. She can't wait to see you." That part made me laugh out loud, alone in my apartment. She couldn't wait to see me? The girl who called me a mistake with a grin on her face and waited for our parents to laugh? The girl who unfriended me the second I stopped playing along? I locked my phone, set it face down on the table, and leaned back against the couch. They wouldn't know it, couldn't know it, but the girl who left their house at 15 with 2 duffel bags and no idea how to survive had become someone else entirely. The woman coming back wasn't there to hug it out. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. I woke up before my alarm, not because I was excited, but because some old part of me still braced for the kind of day where something could go wrong without warning. I made coffee, stood by the window, and watched the city move in slow, early lines of traffic. Cars sliding past one another, people heading somewhere with purpose. And then there was me, heading back to the only place on earth that ever made me feel like an outsider in my own skin. I left around noon, not because I needed the extra travel time, but because I wanted the drive. I wanted the quiet hum of the engine, the smooth glide of the leather steering wheel beneath my palms, the steady rhythm of my thoughts sorting themselves out. 8 years. 8 years since I'd seen that house. 8 years since I'd heard my family's voices without a screen between us. 8 years since I'd been anyone's mistake. The highway blurred past in long stretches of asphalt and faded billboards. For the first half hour, I tried to imagine what it would feel like to see them again, to hear their voices directed at me instead of echoing through a thin wall or cutting across a dinner table like a blade. But the more I tried, the more I realized it didn't matter. They hadn't changed, not really. I was the only variable in this equation. Around 1:55, I turned onto my old street. The houses looked smaller than I remembered. The yards shorter, the trees lower. Like childhood had exaggerated everything to make it seem bigger than it was. The sun was bright, making the pavement shimmer. A dog barked, somewhere behind a fence. A screen door slammed down the block. Everything was exactly the same. Except me. I pulled into the driveway at 2:03 p.m. on the dot. The house stared back at me like a snapshot frozen in time. Same siding, now more faded. Same cracked walkway. Same dead porch light. And the same heavy silence. No cars. No voices. No one standing at the door. It took less than a minute for the irritation to start crawling under my skin. I stayed in the car, turned off the engine, folded my hands in my lap, and stared at the door that refused to open. 5 minutes. 10. 15. The heat pressed against the windows like a living thing. A bead of sweat slid down my spine as the sun shifted higher, flooding the driveway with light. Just when I was about to text my mother, more out of formality than concern, I saw movement at the end of the block. 3 figures, walking, slowly. My father was carrying a gas can. My mother was waving, her hand slicing through the air like she was signaling from the deck of a sinking ship. My sister walked between them with a little boy attached to her leg, his small shadow stretching long behind him in the afternoon sun. The moment they saw the car, they froze. My father's face went pale, the way someone looks when they realize the stakes have changed. My mother's smile tightened. My sister blinked, once, twice, unable to decide whether to look at me or the car or the ground beneath her feet. The little boy gripped her jeans and said nothing. "We overheated," my mother said breathlessly as they reached the driveway. The sedan gave out 3 blocks away. We tried to push it, but, well, she laughed, a thin, brittle laugh that pulled at the edges of her voice. My father didn't laugh. He was still staring at the car. My sister swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. "Please forgive us for everything," she said softly. The desperation in her voice didn't surprise me. The sincerity did. It wasn't the kind you feel in your heart. It was the kind you use when you've run out of other options. I didn't answer, didn't hug anyone, didn't force a smile. I just nodded once, turned toward the house, and stepped onto the porch. The inside smelled like it always had. Old carpet, lingering grease, a plug-in air freshener trying to mask a history that couldn't be scrubbed out. In the kitchen, my mother rushed around like a hostess in a sitcom, narrating every motion as if she could fill the silence with her voice alone. "We've got burgers, dear. Your father picked up some good ones. And coleslaw and corn. It'll be so nice, just like old times." My father stood near the hallway, hands in his pockets, avoiding eye contact. My sister lowered herself into a chair, her little boy climbing into her lap with a tired, practiced movement. I sat at the table without saying a word. The chairs still wobbled. The linoleum still had that one corner that peeled up if you stepped on it wrong. The overhead light still flickered every 15 seconds. Nothing had changed. The meal was a blur of overcooked burgers, artificial mashed potatoes, and silence shaped into small talk. My mother asked if work was still going well. My father commented on the weather. My sister mentioned her job, her shifts being cut, the cost of daycare. Each sentence felt like a stone being placed carefully on a scale they were trying not to tip too soon. 15 minutes into dinner, my sister spoke. "My laptop has been acting weird," she said lightly. "Maybe you could take a quick look at it, since you're good with that stuff now." Her tone wasn't casual, it was calculated. I agreed, more out of curiosity than obligation. She led me to her old bedroom, now converted into a cramped space filled with baby toys, an unmade bed, and a folding table that held the laptop in question. I opened it. What stared back at me wasn't a laptop problem. It was a life in quiet collapse. Open tabs showed job applications, customer service, data entry, work from home stuff that screamed desperation. A half-finished resume sat in a folder on the desktop, my name typed neatly into the reference section. Behind me, she shifted her weight nervously. "I mean," she said, trying to sound casual, "your company hires remote, right? I'm great with people. I could learn. I could help." I didn't answer. She kept talking anyway, because silence was the one thing she never learned to sit in. You know, emails, scheduling, stuff like that. We're family, right? I closed the laptop. "We're not hiring." The words were flat, cold, true. Her face didn't crumple, didn't flare with anger. It just emptied. Like she finally understood the door she'd been hoping was open had always been shut. We returned to the kitchen. My mother was waiting. She didn't even pretend to ease into it. She told me about the bills, the broken water heater, the overdue notices piling up on the counter, how hard things had been lately. Then she placed her hand on my arm. "If there's any way you could help," she whispered, "even just a little, we're still your family." The word family hit differently this time. Not warm, not comforting, but heavy, like an anchor they were hoping I'd tie around my own wrist. I stared at the table. A single card sat beneath a coaster, the edge bent. I pulled it out. "Happy 22nd, it said. We love you so much." It was never sent. A script prop, a tool, a safety net they'd kept tucked away. I placed it back where I found it, and I stood. "I booked a place in town," I said. My mother blinked, startled. My father looked relieved. My sister stared at the card like it might transform if she glared hard enough. I didn't add anything else. That night, I checked into a hotel overlooking the lake. Floor-to-ceiling windows, thick white blankets, a rainfall shower. It smelled like citrus and velvet and something expensive I couldn't name. When I walked through the lobby, the staff greeted me with practiced smiles. "Good evening, Ms. Mercer." At 9:16, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Would you be mad if I asked for a loan?" A pause. "Not for me, for the car and the kid." Another pause. "He's never even been to a zoo." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. But I didn't block her either. Sleep came late and light, slipping away every time I closed my eyes. The dark kept filling with memories of her voice, her laughter, that last line from her message. "He's never even been to a zoo." By morning, the message still sat unread, glowing faintly like a warning, or a trap. I checked out of the hotel before 7 in the morning. The air outside was crisp, almost sharp. The kind of morning cold that stung your skin just enough to remind you you're alive. I bought a coffee from a place down the street and sat in the parking lot of an old strip mall, watching sunlight crawl over the cracked pavement. A closed-down Radio Shack stared back at me with boarded windows and faded red letters. It was strange how familiar that silence felt, like the kind I used to wrap myself in when the house back home got too loud. By 8:30, I was pulling into my family's driveway again. My sister was already on the porch, arms wrapped around herself despite the rising heat. She looked smaller. No makeup, dark circles, a hoodie hanging off her shoulders like she'd borrowed it from someone bigger than her. Her son was somewhere inside. I could hear the faint buzz of cartoons drifting through an open window. She took a sip from a gas station coffee cup, then looked at me. "Hey," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just followed her inside. The house felt even smaller in the morning light, like the walls had shrunk overnight. My mother and father were still asleep. The air buzzed with the hum of the old refrigerator and the faint static from the TV in the living room. My sister led me into the dining room and sat across from me, leaning forward like she was about to negotiate a hostage exchange. She didn't ease into it. "I know we weren't great to you," she began, her voice low. "I know we said things. I know I did. I was a stupid teenager, but things change." I waited. She continued. "I have a kid now. I get it. Life isn't easy, and I'm trying. I really am. But I need help, not a handout. I just need a chance to start over." She reached into a drawer beside the table and pulled out a worn folder, sliding it across to me like it held state secrets. Inside was a business plan, a mobile pet grooming service, a name, a logo, mocked up on a free design tool, a few printed pages stapled crookedly together, an Instagram handle with 2 posts, blurry photos of someone else's dog, a list of services copied from a competitor's site. And at the center of all of it, me. She wanted money. She wanted my help building a website. She wanted to borrow my car to drive to appointments. "I already have the handle reserved," she said, trying to smile. "I just need someone to help me get it off the ground. Maybe like $5,000? More if you think it would help." I didn't touch the folder again. Instead, I asked, "Do you remember when I was 13? Her eyes flicked up, confused. "When you told your friends I made up a fake scholarship because I wanted attention?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "You laughed," I said. "They laughed too. You said I'd never even get into community college." She stared at the folder. "I was a kid," she whispered. "So was I." A long silence stretched between us, heavy, uncomfortable, real. Before she could answer, the soft shuffle of footsteps entered the room. My mother stood in the doorway, wrapped in an old bathrobe, hair tangled from sleep. She blinked at us like she hadn't expected to see the 2 of us awake, let alone sitting across from each other like opponents in a tournament. "Oh, I thought you left already," she said, attempting a cheerful tone. "I'm heading out soon," I replied. She stepped further into the room, wringing her hands. "Well, before you go, there's something your father wanted you to look at. Just a little paperwork." The way she said paperwork made something behind my ribs tighten. "What kind of paperwork?" She led me down the short hallway toward their bedroom, speaking too quickly, filling silence the way she always had. "He's thinking about early retirement," she said. "We weren't sure about some forms. We just thought, since you're, you know." She gestured vaguely, like my job title was an object floating above my head. "Good with numbers." Inside the bedroom, a small stack of envelopes sat on the dresser. Insurance letters, social security forms, tax documents, and on top, something else. A bank statement, folded, crumpled, with a sticky note attached. The handwriting on the sticky note was familiar, round, slanted. My mother's. From Kara. My stomach dropped. I unfolded the statement slowly, each line sharp as a blade. There it was. A withdrawal. $10,000. 2 months ago. I stared at it long enough for the black ink to blur, long enough for the room to tilt. "What is this?" I finally asked. My mother's mouth tightened. Not in panic, not in fear, but in the stiff, uncomfortable way someone looks when they've been caught doing something they don't want to justify. "Oh, that," she said with a nervous laugh. "That's just an idea. We were thinking if things got really bad, maybe you could help, just temporarily. We weren't going to ask unless we absolutely had to, but people around here..." She sighed. "They talk. They don't understand how hard things have been." I kept staring. "You told someone I already gave it to you," I said. "Didn't you?" She paused. "Not long. Just long enough to confirm everything." Then she shrugged. "It made things easier," she said softly. People go easier on you when they think you have someone looking out for you. They hadn't invited me to reconnect. They'd invited me to fulfill a role: the savior, the investor, the solution. They'd already built a story around me, placed me neatly inside it, and were waiting for me to play my part without complaint. And that was when something inside me clicked so loudly it felt like the whole house should have heard it. I wasn't angry. Not really. Anger implies expectation. I was done expecting anything from them. "I'm not giving you anything," I said quietly. My mother's face didn't crumple. It hardened. I continued. "Not because I hate you, not because I want to see you struggle, but because you earn this." She blinked. That was all. No tears, no apologies, no understanding. Just confusion. Like she couldn't comprehend a world where I wasn't obligated to save them. I set the statement back on the dresser. I turned, and I walked out of the room, out of the hallway, out of the house. I didn't look at my sister when I passed her. I didn't say goodbye to the child sitting on the couch, staring at the TV with that same blankness in his eyes. I didn't pause in the kitchen to hear my father's footsteps catching up behind me. I stepped outside. The sun hit my face. The air smelled like cut grass and exhaust. I unlocked my car, and I left. I didn't rush. I didn't slam the car door. I didn't screech out of the driveway like someone escaping a burning building. I backed out slowly, deliberately, giving every person in that house enough time to understand that I was leaving on my terms, not in anger, not in panic, but in certainty. Through the rearview mirror, I saw them emerge one by one. My sister stepped onto the porch first, arms crossed tightly over her chest, jaw clenched. Her son hovered behind her, clutching the corner of his shirt with both hands. My father followed, hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders drooping in a way I had never seen before, as if the gravity of what just happened was settling in. My mother didn't come outside. She stayed in the house. Maybe she thought she could still fix it. Maybe she thought if she didn't see me go, I might come back. Or maybe she just couldn't bear the sight of the one person she always assumed would eventually save them, walking away. I didn't wave, I didn't honk, I didn't mouth goodbye. I just drove. The farther I got from the house, the lighter the air felt, like the world had been tightening around my lungs for years and finally let go. I didn't realize how quiet the car was until I stopped at a red light and could hear my own breathing. Slow, controlled, almost calm. There was no music, no calls, no notifications that demanded attention, just the road beneath me, stretching out like a clean page. By the time I reached the highway, the sun was dipping lower, painting everything in gold. I rolled the window down and let the wind whip past my face, pulling the stale pieces of the past with it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the mistake child. I felt like the woman who survived her own beginning. When I pulled into the parking garage of my apartment building hours later, the lights were already on inside the lobby. The security guard nodded as I passed. The elevator hummed, clean and modern, rising smoothly to my floor. When I opened the door to my apartment, it felt different. Not bigger, not emptier, just mine. The soft glow of the lamps washed the room in warm, amber light. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus from the diffuser. I always forgot to refill. My laptop sat open on the dining table, 2 emails waiting in my inbox. The first was from a client offering a bonus for early delivery. The second was from my father. "Hope you got home safe. Maybe it's best if we give things some space. This weekend didn't go how we hoped. Take care." No signature. No apology. Just a polite dismissal from a man who still didn't understand why I'd walked away. I typed one word back. Understood. Then I closed my laptop. That was the last message I ever sent them. They didn't reply. They didn't follow up. They didn't try again. A week passed, then another, then a month. No calls, no texts, no attempts to rewrite history, no sudden epiphanies or emotional breakthroughs. Just silence. One evening, as I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea, the city spread out like a constellation below me. Something strange happened. I realized I hadn't thought about them all day. Not once. And when I finally did, there was no anger left, no sadness, no longing, no curiosity about whether they were okay, or whether they missed me, or whether they regretted anything. What I felt was something quieter, colder, more honest. Indifference. Later that night, an email popped up in my inbox from a name I didn't recognize, a neighbor from my hometown. Someone who heard I was doing really well. Someone who saw me drive away last weekend. Someone who wondered if maybe I might help the family. They're going through a rough patch. I didn't respond, because the truth was simple. I didn't ruin their lives. I didn't punish them. I didn't retaliate. I just built mine. Without them. and the absence of access to it, that was the consequence they never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up and realized something even larger. There would be no reunion, no apology, no future moment where everything suddenly made sense, no final chapter where they admitted I deserved better. The door had closed slowly, quietly, over many years. And I was the one who finally locked it, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but because some things truly are better left behind. I don't tell this story often. Most people who know me now see a calm, focused woman who built her own life from nothing. They see the success, the discipline, the independence. They don't see the girl who sat alone in a dorm room, lit only by a laptop screen, teaching herself to code until her eyes burned. They don't see the teenager who left home before sunrise and never looked back. They don't need to, because that life, the one shaped by silence, survival, and small victories, belongs to me alone. And that closed door? It's staying closed,